Well, hello. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip,
I'm CJ.
and it's Monday in the rib. And looks like we had a little technical difficulty at
Yes,
first.
I did. I fixed it.
We're back, and we got a lot to talk about after the weekend. But I gotta again mention you flush. You're outdoing yourself with these quotes. I don't know. I gotta.
Let me guess, the Milton Friedman one.
I know that's what I get. You really got me. My favorite. My favorite. Economist in the world, and you gotta open with that. Ah, man, that was really good, and the closing quote was good too. Another great comedian, political satirist from the early 1900s. Well, this is the opening quote that CJ put. We have a system that increasingly taxes work and subsidizes non-work. Milton Friedman, the one of the greatest economists, not the greatest economist that's ever lived. And at the end of that flush, we had, he made a couple of other quotes like that. He really used to poke fun at and that was in the early 1900s. So imagine if he ever was alive today to see what's happening. But the only difference between death and taxes is that death doesn't get worse every time Congress meets. That's one of his best. But he had a couple. Will Rogers. So look him up. He was one of the greatest satirists around, and he was a regular guy, and it was unbelievable. But we have to paraphrase that and say, death and taxes in Fall River. Death doesn't get worse after you die, but every time the city council meets,
it gets worse.
We have to change Will Rogers. We have to paraphrase it. Every time the city council meets, death doesn't get worse. Every time the city council meets, that's it. You're still dead. But I'll tell you, the city is just Coogan is blatantly out of control. I mean, he was on the radio saying he's going to put substantial money into the health care. Well, I got to get those numbers again. It's going to be part of that complaint we're going to file. I think, and I got a good head for numbers. I think at the time we had saved $17 million in the previous 4 fiscal years. Okay, so that's gone. So he's going to put $3 million in. That's $20 million. What happened to the $17 million we saved? They spent it. We gave them that money for health care. They spent it. Now we're going to pay to give them an additional substantial amount out of our taxes when we've already paid them for that benefit. And this is crazy. Mishandling of money. Yeah, and then he must have called the fire chief. Now they're putting conditions you can't videotape, you can't take pictures. Well, that's because he wants to cover it up. The union was right complaining about it, and Coogan was wrong, and the fire chief lied. Well, he lied in the report, too, to try to get somebody fired when he was a captain. So that doesn't surprise me that they lied. But this is out of control. We got a mayor that basically says, listen, shut up, don't say anything, nothing's wrong. We spent all this money. Nobody's going to ask that question. No council is going to complain that I'll give them the numbers again. I'm going to get those numbers. I got them buried in one of my files. I'll get them again. And I'll get every fiscal year that we were under budget and then say what happened to that money. I want some city council to say, what the hell did you do with the money? Where did it go? This is crazy.
We don't make this stuff up.
MAGA. Okay, then. Yeah, well, we need those, too. We need something. And, of course, mentioning MAGA, we've got to say they did attack a base in Qatar, although they gave us a warning, which is kind of like they're just doing it as a show. But we took out their nuclear capabilities, supposedly, between Israeli and us. And to switch over from the city, we'll get back quickly, but Let me explain something to you pinheads that don't understand uh, what's been going on with it for the last 47 years. No injuries. No.
They
They were
they
prepared for the
intercepted
attack.
all the missiles. They intercepted all the incoming missiles.
Yeah. And but for the last 47 years, through their proxies, they've been killing Americans and killing people in Israel and killing people everywhere, financing them. Trump's first term, he took he had them broke. They didn't have any money. Then Biden got in. You know, Obama gave them pallets of cash. Then Biden got in and lifted sanctions on the oil. Now they've got hundreds of billions of dollars in oil that they've sold, and now this is what's financing their terrorism. And they were getting the nuclear bomb. And anybody who doesn't think these religious zealots are not going to use a nuclear bomb, you're crazy. They've been chanting death to America, death to Israel for 47 years. If they get a nuke, Israel's going to be a parking lot because they can't beat Israel in a war. They've tried numerous times, and they can't. The Israeli military is great.
You know what the sad part about it is? The Democrats right now are all screaming, ranting, and raving that Trump violated the Constitution. He does not have the authority to start a war. He's not starting a war. He said he's not starting a war. Okay? So they're all against stopping Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. But you can't have guns. Remember that. The Democrats don't want you to have guns. But screw it. Iran can have nuclear weapons. Why not? No big deal. They're not going to cause any problem.
You know, look, CJ, it fascinates me that most of Congress are lawyers. Okay? And they don't understand. Number one, they keep talking about he violated the Constitution. The Constitution doesn't have anything about the War Powers Act. That was passed in 1973 by Congress. And it's unconstitutional because but the only thing the Constitution says is that he is the commander-in-chief of the Army and the Navy. So that's what the Constitution says. He has the right to do whatever he wants. And the War Powers Act, which is unconstitutional anyway, but it doesn't say that he can't protect America as the commander-in-chief. It says he can't declare war. That's what it says. And these people are lawyers. They can't understand what it says. The War Powers Act says that Congress, he has to go to Congress before he declares war. He didn't declare war. He just did a preemptive strike like Israel did to stop him from getting a nuke and terrorizing us.
A historical preemptive strike. It was the first time B-2 bombers were used. And those bunker busters.
That's right.
First time.
That's right. Yeah. And I wonder if one of those would work on City Hall. I don't know. But
we could only hope.
But you know, I mean, look, I understand the Arab culture very well. I was brought up in that culture. Those people who those religious zealots are still living. I think somebody said 7th century, but somewhere between the 7th and the 12th century. Women, you know, they can beat women in the street. They can throw gay people off the roof and kill them. Sharia law says you can kill your own children if they violate one of the tenets of the Quran. So, like go out with a non-Muslim or something. Actually, I had a case years ago. Now it's been quite a while, but they had a Muslim in of course Minnesota or Wisconsin, one of those states where there's a lot of them. He killed his daughter, and the police went in to arrest him, and he's like, "What are you arresting me for?" They said, "You killed your daughter." He said, "That, yeah, okay, I did." He said, "Well, you can't kill your daughter." "Yes, I can." He said, She went out with an infidel, and so I killed her." and that's I got a right to do that under Sharia law. Well, we don't have Sharia law in the United States. They're having problems in Europe already. I think in Sweden, where they've created communities within these cities that now are living by Sharia law in Europe. They're having major problems in Europe with this stuff. They tried it in Texas, but fortunately, Texas it's a red state. They got a red governor. They got a good governor, a good lieutenant governor. They put the kibosh on it. They wanted to build their own community, and then once they built that community, they would be running it like they're back in Iran. They would be running it under Sharia law, where they can throw people off buildings and beat women in the streets because they didn't wear their hijab. So I mean, look, don't tell me you don't have to tell me about how crazy they are. My mother was born in the United States, went back to Syria at the time, but it's Lebanon now. There was no Syria when she was there. And she was an infant. She was a young child during the First World War, and they used to hide the women and especially the children, and they hid her in a chicken coop when the Turks came. So this isn't hyperbole that these people saying how batshit crazy these people are. My mother lived it. They hid her in a chicken coop. That's the reason they created Lebanon, because that's where all the Christians live. Now it's been overrun by the Muslims, so it's no longer. But Lebanon was where the St. Anthony of the Desert Church is the Maronite Rite. It's not the Roman Catholic Rite, it's the Maronite Rite. But there are a lot of Christians in the Middle East. There are a lot of Druze. There are a lot of other. But these religious zealots that are still living in the 7th to the 12th century, they will nuke us without a hesitation. So don't think that they're just trying to scare people or make you believe that all this stuff that they did was unnecessary. It was necessary. So with that, you can switch back to the city if you want, CJ.
Well, I just think it's interesting that we're dealing with missing money, because I don't care what you say, that money in healthcare is missing. Paul Coogan has 2 outlets. 2. We Suck at Radio and Fall River Community Media. Other than that, nobody listens to him because they know he's a liar. And he's worse than a liar because he believes his own bullshit. And that's the sad part about it. Now, front page of the Sterile News. Trash. Like we haven't talked enough about trash. Okay? $3 million. $3 million. I'll say it one more time. $3 million. Paul entered into an illegal contract with the trash company because they wanted more money, and if they didn't get it, they weren't going to fulfill their contractual obligations. And Matt Thomas said, and so did Al Oliveira, oh, it will be a public health crisis. We don't have the capability to handle it. Well, Jazel should have thought about that before he privatized. Okay? And we're still paying for the trucks.
After we lost money on them.
$3 million. They went to the city council and asked for $1.5 million, which they rejected. Then they found out from Matt Thomas, who had to recuse himself from the trash negotiations for a conflict of interest. But he's over there talking. Hey, Joe Camara, guess what? If they have to recuse themselves, they can't speak. You ever notice when Linda recuses herself, she leaves the chamber? That's what you're supposed to do. Your job, Joe Camara, is to say, hey, Matt Thomas, shut up. Get the hell out of my council chamber. You've recused yourself. Get out. The only person asking any questions about it was Michelle Dion. Linda was making comments. I'm so sick and tired of talking about trash. I was on the trash task force. We voted unanimously to put it out to contract.
Well, she's sick and tired of taking out trash, but they never get sick and tired of paying our money to take it out. That's the problem. The problem is, where is our money? They've got 17 million. I want to know. I'm going to get those numbers again, and I'm going to send them to all. I want to know why that after we made it 17 million, we had to cut it at 25. So I think if I remember, and like I said, I got a pretty good head memory, but I got zillions of numbers. But I think it was 17 million in those 4 years that I had that we ran under budget, and I think 13 million of it was the city of Fall Rivers. So $13 million that they had, and they didn't save one penny, and it was given to them for health care. It was given to them specifically for health care, but now, because they blew their money, we've got to give them additional money out of our tax dollars. We've already paid that bill. That's why we're going to file complaints. That's malfeasance on the part of public officials. You can't keep. How many times are you going to charge me? It's like water. You get charged for water even if you don't use it. We don't care. We're just going to keep taking it out of your wallet until you're broke, and then you can just lose your house, can't afford your apartment, and just go somewhere. We don't care about you. All Paul's friends can afford it. Well, the city of Fall River still has one of the lowest per capita incomes in the state, if not the lowest. I'll have to check Lawrence and Lowell and a few of these other places that are down on the bottom there. But we're down at the bottom. We're almost less than half of the average state income and the average national income. It's not their money, Annalise. It's not their money. It's our money. I mean, they pay a little bit of it, but they're not paying a lot, and they can afford it. I mean, when you sit in that chamber and you're dishing out $15,000 pay raises, $18,000 pay raises, $33,000 pay raises, well, something, I wouldn't be complaining either. If somebody gave me a $15,000 pay raise, I'd probably say, okay, Paul, do anything you want. Because this is crazy. I mean, this is malfeasance at its absolute, max. I mean, this is the Peter principle on steroids. They just can't, and no matter what they do, they just never stop. Well, it is bribery. It is bribery because they bribe a lot of these people. There was an allegation in the school department that the people who bargained the contract all got jobs. So did they sell their membership down a river? And who was involved in that negotiation? Maybe Paul's brother? He's good at selling his union down a river. He did it. And but all three of them got jobs. They weren't put out for bids, and people are afraid to complain. I got calls on that. Oh, those jobs are not put up for bid. They negotiated with Kenny Pacheco. Then Kenny Pacheco gave the people who negotiated the contract a job. That's bypassing the union, by the way, under 150E. But nobody cares. I mean, look, the school committees, even worse. Horrifying thought is the school committee's worse. Worse than the city council, if that's even, remotely possible, but it is. They just don't possible. They don't care. I mean, I look at this budget and 6 years of this stuff with him. He's never put a dime away for anything. Healthcare money, they blow it. Surplus money, they blow it. What are you going to do? I mean, if anybody, this guy is the most. I've never seen anybody this fiduciarily irresponsible ever, because he doesn't care. He never had, he had a job. He got a job politically. He got a vice principalship politically. Now he's the mayor. And when he's out of here, he's out of the city. He doesn't care what he does. Oh, and I was driving down Bedford Street the other day, and I saw the new sign where Canton's Clunkers used to be for 52 luxury downtown apartments. Now, I don't know, CJ, maybe I'm crazy, but you think somebody's going to move down from Newton to live on Bedford Street?
Of course.
Our downtown, which is non-existent. What is he going to, you can walk to downtown, but what do they got? Nothing. A courthouse. Maybe if you're a criminal and you're getting arraigned, you won't have to take an Uber to court. You can walk down from your luxury apartment on Bedford Street. I mean, I don't know what the hell these people are thinking. I don't know. It's crazy. 52.
Yes, I know. And there's no parking.
I know.
And there's no
Who
parking.
needs parking? They might come in on their private helicopters. They might
That's
have
right,
a
man. On
helipad
the top of the
on the top.
building.
Who knows? There's all these rich people that want to go shopping at the Gucci store. There's going to be one on South Main Street right after they build those apartments.
That's right. That's
Not.
right. And the ZBA granted the variance once again. The corrupt ZBA.
No, it is. It's crazy. I mean, the way he's and like, at least sometimes we had mayors that said, well, if I'm going to spend some money, I'm going to kind of limit the pay raises. Maybe we'll give zeros out. In the old days, the city was in better financial shape. And if they got a little tight, it'd be, you guys can't get nothing. So you got to take a zero. And they did. Now it's like, hey, give them all kinds of money.
Have no idea how much they're renting for. Probably $2,400 a month.
Yeah, I would say. I'd say that's probably the starting figure, because remember, they're going to be luxury apartments near downtown.
That's right. You know what the luxury apartment's going to be? They're going to put a bidet in. They figure with all the shit in downtown Fall River, they're going to have to wash their ass somehow.
Oh, I'll tell you. Well, look. Hey, we got great viewers and great comments, and we got to laugh to stop from crying, because, I mean, I don't know how anybody thinks this city is going to survive. And remember, he's running for re-election and lying his ass off while he's doing it. Like, I'm going to put substantial money into healthcare. Well, why didn't you put? Well, what did you do the last 6 years you were in office? You stole all the money that you had.
That's right.
You have to put substantial money in here, because you wasted it all. You can't.
Let me ask you something.
You can't keep money. Money burns our money burns a hole in your pocket. I'd like to see your bank account now, because I know you can live on your pension. You've probably been banking your paycheck. You'll be a multimillionaire when you walk out of Fall River and go back to Somerset.
That's it. Let me ask you something, Chip. What do you think of Jamestown, Rhode Island? What do you think of Jamestown, Rhode Island?
I haven't been to Jamestown in years, but it's a nice little town.
It's a little upscale, don't you think? I mean, it's not Newton, but it's a little upscale.
Yeah, it is.
Guess what they just did? They broke ground today on, guess what? Affordable housing. A town. Not 52 units of luxury apartments. Paul thinks that's going to solve the housing crisis. It's not. It's not going to solve the housing crisis. We've got people who are homeless that are living in refrigerator boxes along the rail trail. And what's Paul's solution? Send in DCM. Send in the police. Bulldoze it all down. Throw it all away. That's what he thinks of human life. That's what you get. And if people don't remember that Paul Coogan is a louse on election day, you get what you deserve. You get what you deserve. And I'll tell you now, nobody deserves that.
Sorry, CJ. You know me, I'm obsessive compulsive about numbers when you mention things. So you have to mention Jamestown. It's building per capita housing for their citizens, right? Affordable housing, right?
Yeah.
Well, our per capita income, remember, is $31,998 according to the United States Census Bureau. And I don't get figures to suit my, I could look around and maybe get some that are slightly different, but I always use the same benchmark, which is United States. Now, this is from the United States Census Bureau. Right now, I just looked it up. The per capita income in Jamestown is $85,464. And they're building affordable housing. That's the per capita compared to 31. And their household income, remember, Fall River's household income is $53,000 and change.
If they're lucky.
Their household income is $141,442. Virtually 3 times as much. But they need affordable housing. So, the poor people in Fall River, Paul, don't need it. They don't need it. Jamestown needs it. Jamestown needs it. They're making 3 times as much money as our people do, and they're going to build more, and their population is it's minuscule compared to ours. Let me get back to population.
Yes, Jeffrey, I did hear that the chief was on We Suck at Radio. And I heard that she said she feels threatened by Paul Garvin. He was carrying his firearm.
5,494. They only got 5,000. They only got 6,000 people in Jamestown, and they're building affordable housing. We got over 90,000 people in here, and like I said, you said 24. I'd say 24 is a start. If you get multiple bedroom apartments in those luxury apartments, I'm going to say they're pushing $3,000.
Yeah, easy.
Jeff
asked if we heard that Kelly Furtado was on We Suck at Radio.
They just don't care.
Okay, he asked if we heard. Yes, she was complaining about Paul Garvin carrying his firearm into the city council chamber, and she feels threatened. You're the freaking police chief. Revoke his license to carry. And then go fight it out in court.
Yeah, Fred.
Yeah, it's everywhere, Fred, except Fall River.
Everywhere except Fall River.
That's right, because we got to have market rate housing. It's the only way to make Fall River a better place.
It's just nuts. Yeah, Jeff. We did hear the chief was on WSAR. I don't ever listen to We Suck at Radio, but I heard that. Yeah, that's right. I got to ask you. I didn't have a time because today was such a horrible day, and I was busy trying to do a little bit of stuff before it got brutally hot. But did you hear anything about a Facebook postings by Cliff? I guess she referred to Cliff and Sean on the radio.
Yes, she did. But she complained about everything. But again, the Coogan administration only has We Suck at Radio as a voice. Nobody else wants to hear it. Nobody. It's that simple.
Yeah, but Annalise is saying Healy's obsessed with housing, but not real affordable housing. That's the problem. We have a governor that's got HDIP. HDIP was designed for developers. They've got all these breaks, and then they look at market rate housing. And like Paul Coogan, they don't understand what true affordable housing is. You see, public housing is for poor people. It's based on income and low income. So you've got to meet a low income criteria. Then they have regular housing, which is, hey, you can afford it or don't live here. Then they came up with this idea of HDIP zones, and then they said workforce housing. Well, the problem with workforce housing is that workforce housing also has income requirements that Fall River people can't meet because they have a minimum that you have to make and a maximum you can make to get into workforce housing. The problem with that is the workforce housing doesn't go by the city. It goes by the geographical area it's in. And Fall River, everybody around Fall River, their per capita incomes are 2 to 3 times more than ours. So they're low. I think the last time I looked at our geographical area, the workforce housing baseline, you had to make at least like over 50 grand. That eliminates most of the people in the city.
That's right.
Because the per capita income's 31 and a household income's only 53. You can barely meet the low band of it, and the maximum is like 75,000. So none of that shit that they do in Boston is for the real people. Affordable housing is for people who go to work every day, don't have the greatest job in the world, and make money. Sometimes they work in 2 jobs, and they're still not making enough to afford housing, or as Paul said it, his words, not mine, Nantucket rent housing. Therein lies the problem. These people are so out of touch with the city they live in because they don't live in our world. Remember when Paul went on his vacation, he went to Boston and he went to the theater and he went to and then they went to the art museum and oh yeah, now he's become a real yuppie. You know, when he was walking around with his hands in his pockets and turfy, he wasn't going to the theater and the art museum. Now he can go with his rich lawyer friends, his banker friends, and his developer friends. But they're as out of touch as Obama was when those illegals got the Martha's Vineyard and they went, are you crazy? Take all those signs down, welcome, get them on a bus and get them out of here. Not NIMBY, not in my backyard. We can have all we want in Fall River and Boston, but not in my backyard, pal. Rich people don't want them in their backyard.
That's true. Hey, Chip, do you remember the number of owner-occupied properties in Fall River?
Not off the top of my head. I think it's down around 36%. I can look
right.
Up right now.
So yes, most people in Fall River rent.
Yeah, it was around 36%. And owner-occupied in places like Newton, Wellesley, Jamestown is 75 to 85%.
Right.
Owner-occupied. And therein lies another problem, obviously. And Fall River, Massachusetts. I'm having problems with this one.
36.3%.
Yeah, see, I got a pretty good head. I was close.
36.3%. That means roughly
I know, it was around 35, 36%. And if you go to Newton, it's 74.75 something. Some of the other affluent areas, they run between 75 and 85%. So,
and that number comes from the U.S. Census Bureau.
Well, I'm sorry. No, it does make sense, Annalise. Uh,
Perfect sense.
It makes perfect sense because what you have to do is build housing that people who don't qualify for public housing see. That's where they fall in. We have people in Fall River that fall in between the two housings that rich people never go to. That's public housing and that's only for the very, very poor. Then you've got workforce housing, which the whole system is wrong because of the geographical area. We have that thing in the middle for the working poor that are working and can't afford their housing. So we need something that doesn't have a $55,000 minimum amount of income when you're living in a city where the household income's barely over 50,000 and the per capita is barely over 30,000. They can't afford it. And a lot of these people work and they can't afford it. That's the problem. Fall River, places like Fall River and gateway cities should be loaded with affordable housing. I mean, Somerset built 54 units.
Yeah, something like that.
Somerset's got 18,000 people in it. They built more affordable housing than Coogan has in his 6 years. I mean, this is nuts. These people don't care about like I said, and I'm going to give you the other Milton Friedman quote, and I think he must have seen the future. When he must have saw Paul Coogan in the future. One of my other favorite Milton Friedman quotes, which I always use on this show, is, if you give the government, and in this case, if you give Paul Coogan your money, no matter how much money you give him, you could give him the Sahara Desert, and he'll run out of sand in 5 years. Because he just doesn't know how to not throw money at everybody.
The problem is, Annalise, is not that people are going to end up renting anyhow. The problem is they can't afford to rent anyhow. That's why the homeless population is increasing. Now, in the summer, it may not be as bad for some. In the winter, it can be terrible. In the summer, like the next 3 days, can be bad. But Paul thinks he's doing everyone a favor. Well, I'm opening the cooling center, the lobby of government center, for you to come in and cool off. Big freaking deal. It's open anyhow.
She said, they're not going to, what's going to happen is we're going to become Detroit. They're renting right now, but these people that are well connected, they get people in here who are not permanent residents, but they'll get this continue. I know that Cadero down on Duval Street, he had War College people. His plate used to tell about all the out-of-state plates. Well, as the mayor, you should actually know the law in his state. If they're here for more than 30 days, they got to register their car in Massachusetts, but they didn't. So
unless they're military personnel. Unless they're military personnel.
But he saw these out-of-state plates, and they have the War College. They come down for a year to go to the Naval War College, and they come down in great numbers. And they've reduced the housing. They used to have a lot of housing for military personnel in Newport, and they've reduced that a lot from the World War II, Korea, and Vietnam standards. They've reduced that housing, so they have an overflow. So what he's got is he's got people that they're going to pay him whatever rent he charges because the federal government's going to pay it. And then when these people leave, they get another batch of people going to the War College. And what's going to happen with Fall River is, and I predict this, remember that someday, it doesn't work just like TIFs did. We've already got it. We've seen what happens to cities that build this kind of housing for people who can't afford it. And I'm going to give you what's going to happen. with one word: Detroit. Detroit. It's still a mess. They ruined Detroit by doing things like this. They wrecked it. They were trying to sell houses in Detroit for $1, and they couldn't sell it because of the crime, because of the lack of education, their educational system, the crime, the taxes. Nobody lived. They all went out. They all moved to the suburbs. This city is going to become a Detroit because look what happened to Point Gloria. It's like if you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it. They built that giant thing on the waterfront and said, this is going to be the crown jewel of the waterfront, and everybody's going to build around it. And then they couldn't rent anything. And now you know who lives in it? Section 8.
That's right.
I knew the guy. He was on a board with me, who was a banker who got the penthouse apartment. And he paid over $250,000 at the time. And that was a long time ago. For that apartment. And then he moved out 5 years later because the place was getting filled up. These things will go to public housing and other things. And that's what's going to be happening because we're going to end up with Detroit. Not the first time. I went to this market rate housing where Stop and Shop on Rodman Street was, and now that plumbing place and a whole bunch of those things. That was all quote unquote market rate housing at one time. Maybe you remember it, CJ.
Yes, I do.
And it was all empty for years. And you know what they did with it? They burned them down. We must have had 10,000 fires. They torched one of those places every single night. We put it out, and after they torched it 2 or 3 times, they'd order the thing. But they had 4 city blocks full of that housing they couldn't fill up, and they would set fire to them. They couldn't rent them. They're not going to be able. Listen, look at these places. Go down County Street and look at that edifice to this insanity that is in the parking lot of the old O'Gills. It's a triplex, not a duplex. 3 units. You walk out there 3 feet from the sidewalk when you walk out your front door, and in the back, you've got enough to put a car in the back. It's like a driveway. You don't have a yard, and they built 2 of them. That parking lot was the size of a postage stamp, and they built 2 giant 3-story triplexes on that one tiny little lot. And who's going to come here? You think somebody that lives in Newton or Jamestown is going to come to Fall River and live on County Street and have no parking, no shops he can shop in? Restaurants don't build restaurants in cities in anticipation of business. They do studies. CJ, you remember when they were looking at putting in what's the name of that buffet thing that's really famous?
The Golden Corral.
Yeah. Well, they remember when they looked at, and a couple of other big chains looked at Fall River. You know what they said? We can't project enough business to keep us in business for the first couple of years.
That's right.
Because most businesses run in the red the first year. Fall River just doesn't have. They'll look at people and go, "What do you got?" You got 1 or 2 restaurants where you can go and have a regular meal. Then the rest of the city's Chinese restaurants and pizza places. I mean, you want to go for a good Italian meal? You're not going to go to Fall River. You want to go for a good steak? You're not going to go to Fall River.
I'm going to Federal Hill.
You know, I'm going up to Federal Hill if I want Italian, or I'll even go to New Bedford or Dartmouth. I'll go to Riccardi's or something like that.
I was going to say
We don't have
Riccardi's.
any ethnic restaurants in this city. We don't have a prime steakhouse. And yet they're advertising this like it's Newton. Well, Newton, pretty close to us in population. You know how many, they've got double the amount of businesses in Newton that we have, almost triple. Why? Because their average per capita incomes around $100,000, and the family incomes around $175,000. Those people got money to go out and eat. They got money to go out and shop. You're going to come down to Fall River and go to what? When I grew up, we had 2 men's shops. We had a ladies' clothing store. We had all kinds of stuff on South Main Street. Oh, they're going to come down and live in Fall River. What are they going to do? drive by and sit in the courthouse and watch the arraignments. That's going to be their social life in Fall River.
There
Give
you
me a
go.
break.
Hey,
Back to you.
let me be a realtor trying to bring people in from Newton. The only thing is, I'm going to be an honest realtor. Come to Fall River. We've got great homes, overpriced at $1 million a piece, a failing school system, high taxes, high fees, a budget that's been doubled in less than 5 years, a mayor that just loves to spend money, a previous mayor who was corrupt and is serving time in a federal jail, a crime rate that you can't believe. What more do you want? Come to Fall River. Bring your children. You got everything.
No education.
Now we're going to bring up the realtors of today. This property is worth $1 million, and you're going to get it for $875. The school system is perfect in this neighborhood. The school is 3 blocks away. K through 5. You'll have no problem getting your child into school. Your taxes will be low. Water is not that high. You'll do wonderful. Yes, Fall River is a shithole, but guess what? It's your shithole.
Well, I'll tell you, CJ. Annalise talks about discretionary income. Very good point. The Battle of Tennessee. I'm glad you brought that into it. We know now, but that's what we need. But we had a recall once. I think we're gonna have a problem. But that's the problem. There's no discretionary income in Fall River. Think about this. Do it. You don't need to be a mathematical wizard to figure that if the average median per capita income is barely over $30,000, just think about your electric bills, your heating bill in the winter. If you rent, you probably don't own a home if your income, unless you're a retiree, then you're in deep trouble because, you can barely live. And you may lose a house that you've had paid off for 40 years because of the taxes, no educational system, crime, terrible streets, and no discretionary income. Think about a family. The average median income, and remember that median income is inflated. I'm pretty good at extrapolating in math. That 53,000 came up from around 48 for a while, and you know why? It's because the rich are getting richer, and it drives up the household income. How much do you think the Fiolas drive that income up when they factor how much money they're making into the equation? So that 53,000 really is not. It's an inflated figure. But let's just, for the sake of argument, say 50 grand. Father, mother, 2 children. You think $50,000 gross? That's gross income, by the way. We're not talking net. You got to pay your taxes, your state taxes, your other taxes, your federal tax. You got to pay your car insurance. You got to pay everything. 50 grand for 4 people. Think about that. Think about that. Think about feeding 2 children and yourselves. Think about paying all those bills. You really believe that there's zero? For the majority of people in Fall River, they have zero discretionary income. That's why you don't see any big restaurants in Fall River. Chains don't come here. They can do the math. They do a study, and CJ will tell you, he knows that. They do a study before they come in a geographical area. That's why you only see Burger Kings and McDonald's and Wendy's and Kentucky Fried Chickens. You're not going to see major chains going to look at them and look at this city. Holy crap. They're making 50 grand. In today's market, well, what? And look at your car insurances now. My car insurance last year went up like $800, and I didn't have an accident. I never had an accident. My house insurance went up like $1,000.
So did mine.
I mean, these companies look at these businesses don't move here. We had that thing that opened up where Joe Shish Kebab was, and that thing lasted what, 3-4 months? It's gone.
Yeah.
Now they just moved in another Lebanese restaurant. They may survive for a little while because there's a pretty large Lebanese community in this city, and they will probably go there and get some food because Joe Shish Kebab lasted for quite a while. But that one may last only because they're going to get an ethnic population down there to get it. But you don't see anybody opening up, prime steakhouses, and you go belly up like in a New York minute.
Hey, Phil over on YouTube says, I rated an A+. Always very informative and entertaining. Much better than that stiff Keith T at FRC Media. All that he's missing is pom-poms for Coogan. That is an unsolicited comment.
Yeah. Well, look, all we do here is call balls and strikes and we're not talking. See, the thing is, we're not talking theoreticals here. We're talking facts. We're talking facts. When I tell you the income, you can go on your computer, go on your phone, type it, U.S. Census Bureau. I can read numbers. I can read. When I give you U.S. Census Bureau, that's not my number. When I tell you what the per capita income is, you can find other sources that may be a little higher, a little lower, but I always use the same. Like I said, I don't bounce around and get numbers that are favorable to me. I always use the U.S. Census. And the same thing when we talk about anything in a city. We're talking about taxes. We got our own tax bills. I pay taxes. CJ pays taxes. We know how much our water bill went up. I know how much my house insurance went up. I know how much. I mean, I'm paying on. I mean, it's crazy. If you look at the old U.S. Census Bureau, it wasn't that long ago when Coogan took over, and I can still pull that thing up probably. I still got something laying around because I got an attic full of paper, but should put a sprinkler system up there if that thing ever goes up.
I was just thinking the same thing.
I just thought of that, but I'm going to tell you. When before Coogan took over, I'm pretty good with numbers. I'm going to be close. You know what the rent was in Fall River before Coogan took over? Around $750 a month. You remember that?
I do.
$750 a month was the average rent in the city of Fall River.
And that was for a 3-bedroom. And that was for a 2 or 3 bedroom.
Schmuck, you're being kind. But listen, we really got to try to get as many new people in. You got to vet them. We're going to have them all on the show once they close and people get their nomination papers in, and try to get some people that are going to take care of the people. I hope other people just try to run out there and get signatures quickly and get on the ballot. Because you know what they're going to be doing? CJ and I are going to be getting calls 6 months into his first year on his 4th term, asking us to run a recall again.
I know. I can see it. By the way, this comment came up earlier from Jeff about pets and service animals. Both Chip and I are animal lovers, okay? But property owners do have a right to protect their property. And when you get animal lovers or people who have animals who don't take care of the property, this is why they don't want animals in their property. And that's the problem. And as for service animals are very clear. A service animal, like somebody that is an animal that assists a blind person, is a service animal. An emotional support animal does not qualify. Okay? I know they're important to people, but they do not qualify. So get that across to you right away. If your landlord or your potential landlord does not want to allow you in with a chihuahua because it's your emotional support animal, you're out of luck. You're out
And
of
we
luck.
get somebody that's name I don't recognize. Ray, you're right. We've been saying that for years. We need people to work. How many times have we talked? I mean, we can go back years talking about the German trade schools and training people to work. And they did it in Rhode Island. Remember when they trained a whole bunch of people to work an electric boat?
They're still
And
doing
they
that.
got big money jobs, welding and stuff. You're right. We keep talking about the old Fall River when every store on South Main Street and every store on Pleasant Street was full. Why? And, everybody wasn't an engineer and a doctor or a city.
But everyone
employee.
had a paycheck.
What did they do? They worked at a mill, but they had a paycheck. When people have got discretionary cash, as Annalise talked about, that's when a city begins to have businesses again, because people will buy stuff. When you barely can survive, you don't have that. You're right. We need people. We need to get programs like they have in Germany. They get and the reality is that what we needed to do a long time ago, and we suggested it, is encourage people with jobs and stuff to come to Fall River and offering them some kind of tax break if they stay in Fall River. If they buy a house in Fall River, they'll get a reduced rate for a few years. Like we give all the rich people tips. Why can't we give regular people with good jobs a tip and encourage them? But then we'd also have to improve our educational system and lower the crime rate. This is the problem. It's not just a single issue. This is what they call synergism. Synergy means 1 and 1 is like 4, not 2. That means when two things are put together, they have an effect greater than the two of them combined.
Exactly.
And that's what happens.
Exactly. Well, it's that time again, folks. Sorry about that. Thanks, Phil, for your comment. Appreciate your support. Thank you for joining us today. Stay cool. Hydrate. The next 3 days are going to be tough. Tomorrow's going to be 100 degrees, and that's the temperature degree, not what it feels like. With the humidity, it's going to be worse. Remember, stay safe, stay angry, and hold your politicians accountable. As Abby said, bye-bye. Have a great day.
She always leaves at the end of the show. See, she watches the whole show, though.